morning, everybody. It's Big Ed here, and I am excited, as always, to, first of all, have a great weekend. And second of all, I have a great guest in my audience today, or not my audience, that's my show today. I have Andrew Archer, attorney at law. Andrew is a bankruptcy attorney. He could definitely help you if you have any debt and if you have any questions regarding. So if you have a question or comment, you guys could actually question or comment below. If you don't get us on the live feed, then you will also be able to get us in our messages to be able to answer those questions specifically for you. But, Andrew, I know, there's people out there that definitely need some help, especially after the holidays. So maybe you could tell them what you specifically can do for them and some of the things you've seen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put your information below so then people can actually see if they need to reach out to you also if they want it more on a personal level. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you can help people?
Sure. I'm a bankruptcy attorney located in South Jersey. Our office is in West Berlin. We help people get out of debt. Sometimes we also help people that have fallen behind on their mortgage and are maybe facing a foreclosure or a sheriff sale. People that have large tax debt to the IRS, maybe the state of New Jersey, we can make a repayment plan for them. Or if their vehicle is in danger of being repossessed or recently was repossessed, we can address that as well so that they can keep the car. That's just a few of the things that bankruptcy can do for you. There's two different bankruptcies really, that personal bankruptcies, the Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, and depending on the situation, we can give you great advice on which one can actually help you out.
So, let's just follow up on that. What is the difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Sometimes people don't know the difference. So I know part of your process is to educate people. So
Right.
maybe get it out there a little bit. What is the difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13?
Yeah, so there's some scary words that get thrown around with Chapter 7. Some people call it a liquidation chapter, which technically it is under the bankruptcy code. But in a nutshell, the major difference is in a Chapter 7, you're not paying any of your debt back. You're trying to discharge the unsecured debt, credit cards, medical bills, personal loans. Chapter 13 is when you're making a payment plan on something, missed mortgage payments, missed car payments. Maybe your car was financed at 18, 20%, and we can usually lower that down to currently around 9.5%. So maybe save you some money, make a lower car payment for you. But the major difference is Chapter 7, you're not paying your debt back. Chapter 13, you're paying some of your debt, maybe all of your debt.
Okay. But then how would that look to a prospective client of yours? If they have a Chapter 7, does that mean that they don't pay anything or 13, or how does that look? Or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so I'll break it down to a Chapter 7. Basically, the Chapter 7 is only really a viable option if all you have really is credit cards, personal loans, or medical bills, and you want to address it and try to get rid of those. There's some, pitfalls or catches that you have to worry about in a Chapter 7. If you're making too much money, you won't be able to do the Chapter 7, or if you have too many assets, you won't be able to do a Chapter 7 because all your assets get placed in the hands of a bankruptcy trustee that gets to oversee the case and to see if you can protect all of your assets under bankruptcy law. Bankruptcy is unique. It sounds awful. You go bankrupt, you lose everything, but that's not the case. Basically, the law says that just because you're filing a bankruptcy doesn't mean you have to actually lose all of your assets. But if you have too many, you do run the risk of a Chapter 7 trustee selling some of your assets. So if that's ever the case, we know that, and we would never recommend you go into a Chapter 7 because nobody wants to lose their house or their car or the money in their bank account, things like that. So we know exactly what the situation is, before we recommend a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13.
Okay.
The Chapter 13 is a little different. So Chapter 13, it doesn't matter how much you have. You could have 5 private Cessnas that are all paid off. I could put you in a Chapter 13 and you can keep all of those planes as long as you're paying back all of your debt in a monthly payment plan over the next 5 years. So it'd be 60 payments under that scenario. Same thing with making too much money. It doesn't matter how much money you make in a Chapter 13. I can still put you in there to address your debt. You make too much money, or you're going to be paying back all those credit cards and medical bills You've got a house that's paid off worth $300,000. Keep it in a Chapter 13. Just expect to pay back all of your credit card, medical bills, and things like that.
Okay, great. So, so many people are so afraid of, like you said, you talk about the fear and the stipulation, of this process and understanding. What is your process when you meet with people, and how do you alleviate some of that fear? Because I mean, everybody usually when they come to you, they're embarrassed. They might be feeling, overwhelmed. So what do you do to try to alleviate some of that?
Yeah, so sometimes I feel like some of it's just being kind of like a counselor and listening to my clients. In Chapter 13 bankruptcy, they don't ask you why you're filing. It doesn't matter. No one in the bankruptcy world actually cares about the Chapter 13. It's always there for you. So you're behind on your mortgage and you don't know what to do. Well, I put you in a Chapter 13 to pay off the missed payments, and they never ask you why or what you're doing. It's just that as long as you can afford to do it, no one can say no to it. It's almost like a guaranteed way to save your property if you've fallen behind in it. I do have a box of tissues too, because it is a little stressful and all that. But bankruptcy is definitely not as scary as you would think. It is a court process. So there's a hearing that you have to attend, but it's over Zoom. Hearing lasts less than 15 minutes. And technically, what my clients don't know at the time when I first have a consultation with them is that I'm asking them every single question they're going to have at the Zoom hearing. I don't want any surprises, nothing like that. And many clients will come in upset about the Zoom hearing. You can do it at my office if you want to. If it feels better, you can do it at your house. But when they all get done, they all say the same thing. Why did I get so worried and worked up for this Zoom hearing? There's no trick questions at all. Most of them are yes or no. It's just something that you have to get through, and everybody has to get through it.
Okay. So, they go through the bankruptcy, either they're making their payments or they get some of their debt alleviated through a Chapter 7, or how that works. What's the process as far as like after? So if you have a Chapter 7 and either you paid back debt or you got your debts alleviated, what does that look like on your credit? What is that, that kind of thing? So how does that work? Either through a 7, if you could take us through a 7 first, right, and then a 13 second, that would be great.
All right. Yeah, that's a common question is, oh my gosh, I filed bankruptcy. I'm not going to be able to finance anything ever again. So a lot of the clients are worried about that and they hit to their credit report. The thing is that a lot of people don't realize that if they're coming in to see me already, they've probably fallen behind or they're getting sued and their wages are being garnished, something like that. So the credit score has already suffered by the time they're actually in front of me doing a consultation. So the fact that you're filing the bankruptcy isn't really going to do more damage to you. We pull a credit report, a bankruptcy specific credit report, and it tells me what the current credit score is and what the expected credit score is 12 months after the case is filed, and it's always higher. For a Chapter 7, you're only in it for about 4 months. So on your credit score, there's 2 components that you need to worry about. One is the credit score and one's a credit report. So the credit score is the more important thing to worry about when you're filing a bankruptcy, because once you're done with that 4 months, you can go finance whatever you want without bankruptcy court approval. So you could get approved for a car loan the day after your case is over, but you might be hit with 18% interest. Another question I get with that is, how long is it on my credit report showing that I filed bankruptcy? It's going to be on there for about 8 years. But again, the score is the most important thing. For obtaining a mortgage in a Chapter 7, basically after your case closes, which is about 5-6 months after you file, there's a 2-year waiting period. And then you can go ahead, and most mortgage companies will allow you to submit an application for a mortgage. Chapter 13 is a little bit different because you're on that repayment plan. The minimum time length for that is 3 years. The max is 5.
Excuse me.
After that, it's the same thing. No court approval for a mortgage as soon as your case is over. I know one bank that says there's no waiting period whatsoever. I know some other banks that say 1 year after your case is over. So if you're on a 5-year plan, you might have to wait 1 year after that. So 6 years from the date of the filing of the Chapter 13. But a lot of my clients will call me up and say, hey, 6 months after they file Chapter 13, I just got approved for a credit card. What do I do? You're supposed to not accept it without bankruptcy court approval, which sometimes can be kind of difficult to obtain. But if you wanted to try to start getting a head start on it, whether you're in a 7 or 13, you can always get a secured credit card, because a secured credit card works like you put $300 down, you get the credit card with a limit of $300. You're not really obtaining credit, but what they are doing is reporting to the credit agencies monthly on that, so you can help rebuild your credit quicker.
Yeah, I mean, talk about rebuilding credit. What are some things? I mean, you hear different experts and stuff and things like this. What are some suggestions you have for people to rebuild their credit and get back on track? I mean, I know you're not a credit specialist, but working in the industry, what have you seen and how can you help them?
Yeah, the secured credit card is the most important thing to do. It's the easiest way to do it. You're not going to get denied for it. You're going to get the card. There's also, if you're in a Chapter 7, you've got payments on a vehicle and you want to keep the vehicle. There's something called a reaffirmation agreement. So if you consider your vehicle loaned on a piece of paper, and as soon as you file the bankruptcy, that piece of paper gets ripped to shreds, the reaffirmation agreement is another contract to continue to pay on your vehicle. And what they do with that is that once the judge signs off on it, they'll start reporting to the credit bureaus that you're making that payment again, which can help rebuild the credit as well.
Okay. I mean, and if you ever seen situations where if people have to come back, I mean, what if say if all of a sudden somebody hits a hard luck after they went through a bankruptcy and then they have to come back again? I mean, is there any hope after that, or is, that's something that a lot of people sometimes we work with, we see?
Right. Yeah. So there is a time limit on how often you can file a bankruptcy if you have completed a prior bankruptcy. So the Chapter 7 one's usually the one that everybody wants because it gets rid of all the credit cards. So if you successfully file a Chapter 7, you've got to wait 8 years again to refile another Chapter 7. But the waiting period is much smaller for Chapter 13s. A lot of people will file the Chapter 13 to make a payment plan on missed mortgage payments. Something will happen down the road, whether it's in 12 months after they file or 4 years after they file, and they won't be able to continue with the payments, and the bankruptcy trustee will dismiss their case. They can still come back and file another bankruptcy after that. The only thing that would stop you from filing another bankruptcy is, someone's filed every year for the past 4 years a Chapter 13. The trustee would then usually send me over an order saying, all right, this is too much, too many bankruptcies all at once within a short time frame. There needs to be a bar from them refiling, but the bar is never a lifetime bar. It's usually 6 months, maybe 2 years that they'd have to wait until they could file another case. So it's not out of the question. I have plenty of clients that stuff happens to, and they have their one case and then it gets dismissed for some reason and they need to refile immediately, and we can do that too.
Okay. So have you seen, like, after they go through the bankruptcy, and have people be able to buy homes and things like this, or?
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely can. Like we talked about a little bit earlier about obtaining the mortgages and things like that. It's definitely possible. There's also in a Chapter 13, I work really closely with a lender that we both know, and the guidelines on obtaining like a refinance while you're in a bankruptcy, specifically a Chapter 13, is that you need to have made at least 15 timely payments to the bankruptcy trustee in order to overcome the first hump of getting approved for a refinance. So even when you're in a bankruptcy, you can refinance, and you could also say auto accident happens, your car is deemed a total loss. There is a way to obtain financing while you're in a bankruptcy as well. Just know that your interest rate is going to be about 18%, but it is possible to get a new vehicle while you're in a bankruptcy as well.
Okay. We're looking at credit reports. Okay. When you look at your credit report, how long does a bankruptcy stay on your credit report? Because that is also a mark. And I know everybody wants to have a really good credit score to help to get loans and things like this. How long does that stay on your report?
Stays on about 8 years, but like we talked about earlier, the score is the more important part.
A 7 or a 13?
On a 7, it's definitely 8 years. The 13, I think I think some of them saying they're falling off around 7 years after the filing. So pulling it off, yes, it's a negative mark, and it does say on your report that it is negative. But I know plenty of people with scores in the low 700s, high 600s, 12 months after their case has been discharged.
Does the discharge count in terms of on your credit report? So say if you get it discharged, for some reason I thought it was 3 years. So maybe I'm wrong on this.
Yeah, it might be 3 years after your 13's over, which would be a total of 8. So yeah, if you complete everything and you get your discharge, that's actually the letter that's signed by the judge that says all those debts that you're trying to say I don't want to pay, that's approved, that's granted, and the credit report. All the creditors should update the credit report to show that, say you've got a Capital One credit card for $5,000, it shouldn't say the balance is $5,000. It should say discharged in a bankruptcy. And the good thing about discharging debts in a bankruptcy, as opposed to trying to pay them back with some debt settlement company, is that you don't get any tax on the forgiven debt that's been discharged in a bankruptcy.
Speaking of taxes, what are some things that can not be included in a bankruptcy?
Yeah, so there's certain debts that are non-dischargeable. So we're talking about any IRS or state of New Jersey tax debt obtained in the last 3 years before you file your case. You can't come in and get rid of your mortgage, especially right now with the way the market is, where everything is valued really high. There is a way where you can reclassify a second mortgage. Reclassify means basically it's a secured claim that cannot be discharged. But if there's negative equity, if you're upside down on your first mortgage, then we can reclassify that second mortgage and basically turn it into a credit card. As long as you complete your case, all of a sudden you don't have a second mortgage on your house anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, also domestic support, child support, alimony, that can't be discharged either. Any secured debts, basically, they're going to have to be addressed in a bankruptcy, or they'll survive in the end, and you'll still be liable for secured claims like car loans, things like that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, when they come to you, and maybe obviously you could say this more than I can, but they think that all their debts will be absolved, and it's not the case.
Yeah, a lot of people do think that, and I wish I could, for sure. But there has been some unique stuff that we have been able to discharge. So certain things like having this one should be non-dischargeable. But for example, let's say you're out and having a good time, and you end up running into a telephone pole, and you get in trouble for the amount of fun you had earlier that evening. Technically, that should be non-dischargeable. But the thing is that the creditor has to try to push to show that that's non-dischargeable. So sometimes if the creditors don't actually do what they need to do, you can actually end up discharging some of the debt that is actually technically non-dischargeable, but because they didn't act, they're out of luck.
When you're saying, and just to be clear, you're saying fun, like they went out partying and things like this?
Yeah. Say the person got hit with a DUI.
Gotcha.
The accident scene. Yeah, because it's a willful and malicious damage to property, which is a non-dischargeable debt in a bankruptcy.
Okay.
Surcharges are a good one, though. Surcharges are fun. You can get rid of those.
Okay.
Court fines, you can't get rid of court fines. But there's a lot in there that you wouldn't think about, but you can definitely get rid of it.
So when people meet with you, each individual has their own case and an individual story. But do you give them, there's just some sort of sheet or something you give, what can be discharged and what cannot be discharged? Do you have something like that?
Yeah, so you basically call me up. I do a consultation over the phone or in person. I ask you all the questions I need to ask you, and I kind of have an idea. And once you pay something towards the fee, I pull the credit report and I put it on there, and I'll have a good idea of what is secured and what's unsecured, and what's also another third category is priority. And I call you in because I have to meet with you person to person to see your face lines up with the ID. The case gets filed under your social security number. That's how they know who filed bankruptcy. And we review it together. So we go through every single creditor that's on the credit report, make sure we list them all, make sure we know whether they're secured or unsecured. So as you as a client would actually be looking at it with me to make sure that we've got everybody on there that you owe money to.
Okay. Well, it seems like you have a pretty comprehensive program there. When people come meet with you, we included your number right there at the bottom of the screen. And like I said, audience, if you guys have any questions or any comments, or you have individual questions for Mr. Archer, you can reach out to him. If you have any comments or questions that you think would be good for the public, just put those questions and comments below. We'll be able to answer those questions for you. And Mr. Archer, thank you so much for coming and joining us today on the show. Very, very informative information.
Yeah, I also want to put out there that a lot of people are, going a different route with phone calls. So if they're uncomfortable making a phone call, they can always Google my name, find my website, and I have a nice little text feature on the website. So a lot of people like to do that instead of actually picking up the phone and making a phone call. It's completely fine. It actually goes straight to my cell phone. So the person you'll be texting is me. Yeah, it's SpillerArcherLaw.com.
Okay, give me 1 second, and I'll post it for everybody to see. SpillerArcherLaw.com right there. So you guys will be able to just go either you give Mr. Archer a call, or you can actually go to SpillerArcherLaw.com, and then there's a nice text feature right there for you guys to go check him out and send a message. And I hope you guys got something from this today, because I definitely did. And there's a lot of great information out there, and you can tell Mr. Archer is definitely a treasure trove of information when it comes to this, and he does everything in a nice, calm manner. So once again, thank you again, Mr. Archer. I really appreciate your time. And is there anything else you have for us today?
That's it for today. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
We'll talk soon.